Under provisions of the California Government Code, the City Council is prohibited from materially discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda unless it can be demonstrated to be of an emergency nature or an urgent need to take immediate action arose after the posting of the agenda. Public documents related to an item on the open session portion of this agenda, which are distributed to the City Council less than 72 hours prior to the meeting, shall be available for public inspection at the time of the meeting. Item number 4, presentations, proclamations, appointments. Right? I'm sorry. I'd like to open the. Okay, our first public comment. I'd like to open the public comment at this time. Is there anybody here in City Hall who, yeah, please come up.
Hello, Bill Klaproth, live in the city of Plymouth. Good to be here. Thank you so much for the the flag salute. I think that's fantastic. Great way to get the community involved. Great to see some of our young folks in the community out, and so excellent. Whoever arranged that, fantastic. I just want to thank a couple of our council members for a program that the city sponsors, which is the ambassador program. And I would suggest anybody in the audience who lives in Plymouth that's not an ambassador, sign up. Mike McLaughlin, council member Mike, arranged a cemetery cleanup just a couple of days ago. It was fantastic. We had probably 7 community members there. See some familiar faces here in the audience. And Mike's kind of like taking that program to the next level and organizing some additional activities. And I just love to go out to those events because that's how we really truly create a community, right? It's like things like that. These meetings are fantastic, right? This is kind of the government portion. That's the portion we actually learn about each other, learn about other people in the community. We had a couple of our city employees out there, which was excellent, right? They brought the dump truck for the leaves and they had a backhoe and everything. And it was great to meet them, right? So we don't usually get to stop and say hi and chat for a minute. So I would just encourage anybody that's not an ambassador today, sign up, because that again is how we can really impact the community in which we live, right? It's simple things like cleaning a yard or the cemetery or painting something. And it's not like you're getting anything in return other than meeting great people, right? They're part of your community and enjoying the work. So thanks, Mike. Doug was there as well. So thanks, Margaret, for supporting that program, and the council for supporting that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody here who would like to speak to the council during public comment?
I'm Michael Spinetta. I live up on Golden Way here in Hawksview. And I just wanted to thank council very much for having a presence at the Community Service Awards ceremony that happened over at the school district's meeting recently. And Mayor Marianne showed up and met Bonnie, who's in charge of the adult students who just appeared up here, and they each got an award for having about 50 to 150 hours of community service each this year. So they've really given back to our community. And so that's pretty neat to know that students in town are doing that. And thank you for being there and representing the council. It's great. And I also wanted to just mention really quick, we had a couple of Plymouth kids graduate from the high school at Amador High, and I'm going to miss a couple of them because I worked with them in drama. But then I also have my neighbor Dean here. Yeah, come on up. And at one point, before we recounted a few hours of community service hours, he had the most hours of the senior class. It's changed, but whatever, he has 527 hours of community service for his time in high school. So, yeah. So he did a great job. He did a lot of his work during the fires plural, unfortunately, and helping out at the ranch.
It was mainly the Caldor fire.
So, yeah, anyway, a lot of good kids here, and so we'll see what the next batch brings next year, but I'll be here. Probably one of those students, probably my daughter. Thank you.
Hey, Dino. Congratulations. Glad you pulled through.
Good job, buddy.
Good evening, John Coburn. I have a couple of things, on behalf of Jim Wise and myself. We want to thank the council an awful lot for the Memorial Day ceremonies that took place. It was a great turnout. We had a good speakers. We had Stan Steiner actually spoke. He lost his he was an adopted son after his two brothers were killed, lost in World War II. And he was turned out to just be thrilled with it and able to mention and honor his two brothers. So it turned out wonderful, and thank you for all your support on the veterans part. The other thing is, I had asked a couple meetings back about the shade structure in the park, and I was wondering if there's any progress on that, or is there any plans to try to fix some kind of shade structure for the farmers market, or whether I should try to buy more umbrellas.
Yeah,
And so anyway, I was just curious if anything has been done, and I can talk to Margaret later about it.
yeah.
And during that same meeting, John, I reiterated your points about having something like that agendized. So if it is in the budget or the Parks and Rec budget is large enough, I don't see why we can't get those up there.
Okay.
Thank you. Public comment?
Steve Pinotti, Plymouth. This winter, the 40-mile-an-hour sign coming into our town by what the Miwok building is now blew down. Caltrans put up a 45 zone ahead sign, which there is no 45 zone. So I called California Highway Patrol. They said, well, it's not our highway when it goes through town. It's the sheriff's department. I called the sheriff's department, got a very rude officer and told me that they don't do anything about this, that I needed to go to city council. And because technically right now it's a 50-mile-an-hour zone northbound until you get to the intersection of Pacific and Poplar Streets, 40 miles an hour southbound, because there's no sign at the beginning of town. I talked to a couple of friends of mine that work for Caltrans. They were going to look into it, but they said they're having a hard time getting signs. So they also said to go to the city council and see if you guys could do something. I just see a school bus stopped out there. I mean, granted, school's out now, and the kids are dodging across the highway, and if the speed limit's 40, they're going 45 or 50. So if it's 50, they're going at a pretty good clip. So I don't know if you can do anything, but I'd appreciate someone looking into it. Maybe, I don't know. Second thing I had on my agenda would be Zinfandel Ridge real estate man. And I don't know if the two representatives from Zinfandel Ridge know Tim Lewis, but he junks our town up every Friday night and puts signs everywhere on the highway at the roundabout and everything illegal. But there's nothing you can do because Caltrans doesn't work over the weekend. So I don't know if anybody from Zinfandel Ridge could talk to him and ask him if he could not make our town look like Folsom or Roseville or whatever with real estate signs all over the place. Don't know. Okay. Third thing was, I didn't come to the last meeting, but the meeting before when the code enforcement officer was here, said, you can call me anytime, you can come in and see me anytime. Well, you can get my phone number anytime. That was another thing he said. Well, apparently you can't. I've been to City Hall 3 times and they said they can't give me his phone number. Friday, you come up here, the door's locked, you can't see him. That's the only day he works here. So didn't know if I heard things that night that nobody else heard, but I'm pretty sure that's what was said. So I don't know how to get a hold of him. I emailed him 4 months ago, and then that night he joked around saying, yeah, I found your email in my junk, but still hasn't got a hold of me. So what do I do? How do I get a hold of code enforcement? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Steve, I would like to say, the comments are definitely not unheard on all 3 of those subjects. Of course, we can't take action on it and stuff. The other day when I was coming through town, and of course you drive the same road for 40 years, you stop paying attention. And I went 45 and I went, wait a minute, something's different about the signs. And I just kind of went, something's different about the signs. And of course I lost thought of it and everything else. But yeah, when a council member notices it, I mean, yeah, I totally agree with you on you.
I just see the kids talking.
Yeah.
I wanted to agree with Keith about the signage being, not lining up and not being consistent. I have to listen to it every time we go down the road because it is my husband's pet peeve.
And I'll chime in as well, since we're not taking action, we are talking, but there are way too many for sale signs all over here. And we probably somebody needs to talk to Mr. Lewis about not having twice as many signs. Thank you.
Anybody else here in City Hall who would like to speak during public comment? Okay, how about on Zoom? Is there anybody on Zoom? And I'm having a hard time seeing if there's any hands up. Okay, Amy Gomes?
Hi there. Yeah, this is Amy Gomes and I'm a resident of Plymouth. We had tried to submit our public comments ahead of time before the packets and the agenda went out. And I guess that's not appropriate or not being allowed by the city, and it has in the past. So it sounded like the city manager or employees needed direction from city council as to public being able to include their public comments into the packet. What's happening now is all the city council is being emailed at one time, but then the submitter doesn't know if they received it. And then they send them out to anybody on the distribution list, but that's not everybody in town. And so nobody's getting all of the same information at the same time. And I just want, I kind of would like to be able to submit any public comments and then have them be part of the historic record. And if they are not submitted that way, they kind of disappear. And that's all.
Thank you. Anybody else on Zoom with public comment for the council? Okay. Ms. Scanlon?
Yes, good evening. I want to thank everybody for their public service and all of the things that you do to keep this a beautiful community. We moved here in the fall of 2018 and are so excited to be able to participate in any way that we can to preserve as much as we can of Plymouth and to bring as much as we can that might be needed. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to express support for allocation of funding. If it's not, please let me know.
Ms. Scanlon, if you're referring to item 6.1, we are going to be having a public hearing on that in a few minutes, but we're not quite there yet.
Thank you.
So if you could wait a few minutes, we can get back to all of you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else on Zoom who has general public comments? We're not on an agenda item yet. So just public comments. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to close this to public comment. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please.
Hello, Don, none other than Plymouth. On a couple of things other people brought up have been bothering me too. As far as the signs, had been wondering, I was going to ask one of the council members or somebody if we have anything in city code about how many signs you could put up for one event. Because as far as the Tim Lewis signs, they're getting pretty irritating. They are if he has a few, whatever, but when they're every 50 or 100 feet in some places and then they're not getting picked up and I see them laying in the street when I drive by the next weekend and stuff, that's kind of irritating. I also would get really irritated if city employees are spending their time and my money out cleaning that stuff up and they blow over and go on the street because they're not getting picked up by that person. And I've noticed it with some of the yard sale signs over the last 10 years. Most of the people are pretty good, but sometimes they're up weeks after. And I'm wondering if there isn't something in the code where if you're going to put up signs about having a yard sale or whatever, it has to give the exact address, or you have to either, I hate to say have a permit because I don't want people to have to go and get permits for everything. But that if you're going to have these yard sale signs up, they have to be taken down within a day of the end of it, the sale or whatever, and have something identifying who's putting up the sign written on it. If it doesn't have that on it, maybe city crews pull it down or whatever. So they know who's responsible for pulling them down, because I get tired of seeing them for weeks on end after a yard sale's over, So that was one thing on the signs. I think, and I've had a lot of other people tell me it irritates them, these signs being left up for weeks on end and the number of signs out there. So that was my comment on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wish to get out of the doghouse because I thank the council for the Memorial Day thing. And I forgot to thank my daughter, who did a terrific job of putting it on. She did an excellent job there. And thanks goes out to Jamie Lemanco.
Mr. Colburn, typically people get their one chance at 3 minutes, but under the circumstances, we don't want to see you in the doghouse with your daughter. Okay, so now I'm going to close public comment.
Mayor, is it okay if I just make a notation on the public comments that were handed out here? There are public comments out there on the table that were brought to us before the meeting on item 6.1. So they're available, and any documentation that we receive becomes part of the final record of the packet at the end of the meeting.
Thank you. Okay, public comment is now closed. Item number 4, presentations, proclamations, appointments. We have none tonight. Item number 5, the consent calendar items. All matters listed under the consent calendar are to be considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless, before the City Council votes on the motion to adopt, members of the council, staff, or the public request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and action. And at this time, we have under the consent calendar item, we have item 5.1, correspondence. 5.2, approve the regular meeting minutes of May 25th, 2023. 5.3, approve resolution 2023-26, making findings necessary to continue to conduct Brown Act meetings virtually. 5.4, accept the warrant register for May 23rd. And I'd like to open this for public comment. Is there anybody here in City Hall who has public comment on item 5? Anybody on Zoom? Any council discussion?
I'd move to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Can we take a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Aye.
Councilmember Kleinfelder?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sim?
Aye.
Mayor Ackerman?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 6, public hearing. Item 6.1, 1, adopt resolution 2023-27, designating the city manager as authorized person to execute and deliver standard agreements and any and all amendments for purposes of the grants. And 2, determine whether current CDBG CV1, CV2-3 grants related to business recovery program and microenterprise assistance program should be replaced by a fire station repair project, and if so, adopt resolutions 2023-28 and 2023-29, amending standard agreements for the CDBG-CV1 and CDBG-CV2-3. Could we please have a staff report?
Yes, I'd like to go through a little bit of history of how we got to where we are today. So going back to 2020, at the council meeting of April 23rd of 2020, the council decided in a 4-1 vote to give business assistant program loans using CDBG funds for COVID relief on the CV1 in the amount of $5,000 each. And there were $60,000 in loans given. And I want to note that these were loans and not grants that were given. And somehow they ended up not being paid back, but forgiven at some point, and ended up being paid out of TOT funds against council direction on that 4-1 vote. On July 23rd of 2020, council allocated $10,000 for TOT business loans to expand outdoor services for COVID relief. And every business in town was contacted by phone by Mrs. Knight, to see if they needed assistance. And surveys were taken and provided to management at the time. It's unknown who got the TOT grants. We also offered PPE through the Alfresca grant. And there was a page on the city's website dedicated for the assistance and the city had for COVID relief. In January of 2021, CV1 came back before the council for authorization for utility subsistence and passed on a 4-0-1 vote with one council member absent. Notices went out in the water and sewer bills advertising the subsistence was available and was included in the newsletter at that time in Spanish and English. In April, at the 22nd, 2021 council meeting, council authorized application for CV2-3 grants in a 4-0-1 vote with one council member absent for the business recovery program and the micro enterprise assistant programs for the applications to be submitted for those two programs. February 10th and March 24th of 2022, updates were brought to the council, and it was agreed on March 24th to seek administrative assistance on those grants. I can find no records on assistance ever being sought out to help with those grants. The funds were returned by interim city manager Johnson, but pulled back out from HCD, and the grants turned over to Mayor Kleinfelder to assist in the grants. Mayor Kleinfelder turned the grants over back into city manager myself. I worked with Councilmember Kleinfelder and came up with many different project ideas that were presented to HCD, and they were all rejected due to lack of COVID nexus. I returned the funds to HCD at their strong suggestion. When the extension for the grants was issued, I rescinded the return of the grant funds, and here we are today trying to determine how to spend the funds. The time period for grant amendments has passed, but are being granted on a case-by-case basis. And according to Lauren at HCD, fire station rehabilitation has been accepted in another agency, the city of Calexico. So we know that it is potentially an acceptable project. I must mention, as I would be derelict in my duties if I did not tell you, that HCD has informed me on more than one occasion that the current grants are one of the hardest to get appropriate documentation on. Based on Lauren Pollock's experience working with dozens of other grantees, the economic development programs have had the most challenges. I'm available for your questions.
Thank you. So I'd like to open this now for council discussion. Questions? Councilmember Kleinfelter?
I don't even know where to start. As we know, I've saved this from the ashes on 2 occasions, which is not my job, but it needed to be done. It's not only important for us to deliver the grant projects that we sign our name on now for the public, but it affects our future fundability if we can't deliver. I know that we've had 6 city managers, but if any one of them had listened and done an RFP in the very beginning, we would not be sitting here discussing this. This would have been delivered. I'm more than upset. And it's to the point that I don't want the city to lose the money. I don't. But I want, because it has not been done properly, I want us to use this as an example of how you do public engagement and get public involved on day one. What do you want to have done with funds? What is your vision? Because that did not happen with this at all, not 1 minute. And now we come down to this, and I'm uncomfortable with the proposal because the same person that is answering these questions now told me early on that repairs were not an eligible activity, and all of a sudden they are now. So I think we should have used and still should use the money for what it was authorized for.
Councilmember McLaughlin?
Obviously, this is a very detailed history. I think Councilmember Kleinfelder touched on it correctly. Where do you begin, right? That the CDBG grants are generally a grant given to a jurisdiction for investment in real property within a community. But under the auspices of COVID, the purposes of this grant were expanded to include other things to help communities work through the difficult times that came with COVID. The way this grant works is that the city would expend funds for a project and then submit for reimbursement. As City Manager Roberts pointed out, the city issued several $5,000 grants to businesses in the community, waived utility fees or paid utility fees for 1 or 2 residents who responded to the mailer. And ultimately, those were submitted to CDBG and rejected by CDBG because they could not find a nexus to COVID or a strong enough nexus back to COVID in order to fund and fulfill these. And this was done 2 years ago while we were still under the emergency for COVID. There's been many concerns raised, and I would say most of them, quite legitimately so, that I believe we need to do a better job. And I ran for this office and I ran for this position for a reason, because I see the need to increase our sophistication of how we engage and work with our community. And I see that work being done with this current council and with this current management and city staff. There's been a lot of changes. A lot of it's invisible to the community, but it is happening and changes are occurring as we speak. So in this particular case, the city extended grants under the auspices of CDBG, waived loans, forgivable loans, waived the loans, and then ultimately was denied by CDBG. And then the city transferred
TOT money, as city manager pointed out, it was not approved by council. City staff were directed by city management to transfer money from TOT to backfill the general fund. So these were not TOT grants. These were grants that ultimately were backfilled out of the general fund in order to make the city general fund whole. That process I also have an issue with, that, that only the city council can approve the allocation or transfer of monies between these types of funds. And what we've learned in my research and going through this and going through the history, and when I say I've gone through history, I don't know, I've got a few hundred pages of information here because I take this very seriously. This is something that's direct and relevant to our community. And what I've learned has been pointed out, that the fatal flaw with this grant as it exists is the wording. CDBG has basically denied more than it is approved for grants that are either identical or very similar to the way our grant is worded. The ability and the burden to actually meet the documentation requirements is exceptionally difficult in creating that clear and direct nexus back to COVID. And the further we get away, the more difficult that becomes. We can't say now that a utility bill in March of 22 was due to COVID unless, we need, COVID tests or among other things. I just use that as an example. The housing and community development is, like I said, this is housing and community development managing the CDBG, because the grants are typically designed for real property investment in the community, not something as subjective as some of the COVID work. In working with CDBG, with the housing and community development, it is my understanding that they have recommended that we change the scope in order to be able to set ourselves up for success. It's been shared with on calls with the individual, with Councilmember Kleinfelder and City Manager Roberts, that if we proceed on the current path, our likelihood of failure is significant, as opposed to changing the scope into something that we can actually achieve. For me personally, in my professional life, I've managed tens of millions of dollars of grants. I understand the importance. I understand what we need to do. I understand the burden of what exists. And something I want to say that, to this community, if we could find a way to make this grant successful in its current format, I'd be Dick Van Dyke at the front of the parade, leading the way through to make it happen. I just don't see how we would be successful in doing so on the backside, because there's other factors that contribute to our success on this as well. In talking about the project or the proposed project, that our firefighters are our firefighters. They're here 24/7 to protect our community on call, whether it's an emergency or a public assist or whatever we need to provide and serve our community. There was an inspection done to that facility, I believe at the end of 2022, maybe in the beginning of this year. They really found the station to be in deplorable condition. There's a great deal of dry rot. There's numerous leaks from the roofs, new and old. There's leaks around windows. It's truly a health and safety violation, a health and safety concern. And I would venture to say we teetering close to, Cal OSHA related stuff or working conditions. And while it's been implied that that's a responsibility of AFPD to handle, AFPD is only responsible for day-to-day maintenance and repairs up to $500 each. The city is contracted and responsible for any repairs in excess of $500. So we are obligated to find a way, or we'll be in breach of contract by not doing our due diligence in looking at and taking care of that particular piece. A factor that we need to really take into account is the amount of time that in the window that this grant has left in it. I believe the CV1 is due date is in February, and then the CV2-3 are, I believe, October. So October of 24. So that'd be 16 months-ish. And in order for these grants to exist, using the CV1 as an example, we would have to craft a program, develop a scope, a purpose, create the program, administer the program, pay for the program, have all checks clear before we can submit for reimbursement before that February 1st piece, and hope at that point that HCD would then approve that project and we would not be, caught as a city with unable to be reimbursed for that particular piece. And that would go for 2 and 3 as well, extending out. Another important piece that really needs to be recognized is the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023, or otherwise known as the debt ceiling legislation that recently passed through our federal government and was signed by President Biden this last week, is that all unspent, part of that bill is clawing back all unspent COVID funds. Well, that's exactly what these are. So the more time that goes by where these funds, where we haven't been able to close the transaction and submit for reimbursement, those funds are vulnerable to be clawed back. And we won't know if they're clawed back until we put in for it and there's no money there to find out, at which point we've still been out of money. I'd say, I think we have two options in front of us. The first is keeping the grant exactly the way it is and administering and pushing forward. In this particular scenario, if we were to push forward, we would be, as a city, responsible for paying out up to the 200 and some odd $1,000 in grant monies through different programs. If we were to put out that $200,000 plus piece out, we then would submit for reimbursement and hope we get that money back. It's possible and quite likely, as HCD has put it, that we would not get it back, or at least certainly not most of it back. The option is to address a current health and safety issue that addresses the first responders in our community and address an issue that currently exists that we are obligated to do. We can get it done in the time frame that needs to be done, and it's something that we're, as mentioned, contractually obligated to get done. And so, as it comes down to the choices, we could go forth with the grant in its current iteration and potentially be reimbursed for our funds for this, the new work, the new projects on the difficult piece. And then we as a city would need to find $200,000 of general fund to make the repairs to the fire station. The other side of that is we could expend that $200,000 within the auspices of the grant, not reimbursed, and we'd still have to make the fire station repairs. And now we'd be in a position of having to come up with $400,000 of general fund in order to be able to close the gap and address both these issues. I'm certainly very much looking forward to the presentation from the community tonight. I'm remaining with an open mind, but from purely a grant administration purpose and a public policy purpose, as I come into this, that's the information that I have at this point. And but I am looking forward to your feedback, and I'm sorry for being long-winded, but as I mentioned, this is sort of a very interwoven piece. And Mayor, thank you for your time. I'm sorry for being so long.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Sim, comments?
Well, thank you, Mike. You haven't left much to talk about it. And I couldn't agree with both council members.
I'm sorry. I went out of turn.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
Anyway, all I can do is highlight a few of the things that have been said here. One is, I think we all have come to realize it's a very complicated grant. We don't have a lot of time to spend this money. The money has to be spent by February 2024. And as our city manager has pointed out, the paperwork is going to be daunting. I can't take exception to anything that Councilmember Kleinfelder said or Councilmember McLaughlin. You both hit some great points. I think the bottom line is the time has come. We have to make a decision. I think that we owe it to Plymouth to do something with this fire station. It's shameful in these times with that fire station has fallen into such disrepair. As Councilmember McLaughlin pointed out, if we don't spend the money on it now, we're going to be looking at spending $400,000 or $500,000 down the road, monies that we don't have. I just think that it's the fire station needs to be fixed, and I feel that's the best course of action is to move in that direction. Thank you.
Councilmember White, and I apologize for going out of turn.
No problem. I guess basically all I have to say is everyone's made some very good points, but I definitely I want to get to public comment. I want to hear what the public has to say.
And I'd also like to have comments after we take the public comments.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes, I'd like to piggyback on Councilmember Kleinfelter. I did talk to the city of Dunsmuir, who has a great program with their CV grants. And they don't actually manage theirs. They actually go to their county, which I'm going to slaughter their name, Siskiyou. Thank you. They have offered, if we stick with our grants, to offer any assistance that we need in running the programs. I just wanted to put that out there, that they do have a great program. It is successful. They have the forms that we could piggyback off of if the council chose to go that route. That is a resource that we have available to us.
Thank you for sharing that.
Excuse me.
Yes, please.
I also, in the course of all of these, at least a year of trying to work on this, I have submitted the names of several consulting firms that have been done very, very successful programs. Calaveras County is cited as one of the top projects in California, and the CV1, CV2, and CV3 done for the city of Jackson had a consulting firm that is agreed that they know what they're doing. So this is not impossible. This was never impossible. And I just, for the life of me, don't know how we've gotten there.
Thank you. At this, and I'm going to reserve my comments. I think my colleagues have made some excellent points, which quite frankly, there would be nothing for me to add that they haven't already covered. So I would like to open this up for public comment now, and we'll have public comment. And then when public comment is over, we'll go back to the council for discussion. So I'm going to start with anybody here in City Hall who would like to speak to the council on this. Now is your opportunity. Please come up.
So thank you. My name is Rob Withrow. I'm the fire chief for Amador Fire Protection District. And I thought maybe I could just provide a little bit of a brief background on how this list came about, or at least this latest list of repairs that are being requested. When I accepted this position, of course, one of the things you do in a new position is get to know the district and toured all our different facilities, our different fire stations, look at our apparatus, et cetera. And pretty glaring that Fire Station 122 here in the city of Plymouth needs some work. And my first concern was, have we not said anything? Is this something we've just been sitting on and nobody's, said, hey, we need some help here? And I did a little digging, and that's not the case. The farthest I can go back is 2018, where we did an inspection. I wasn't here then. I can't speak to the details of that, but I do have some documents that document some of the same things we're talking about today. So that's just a brief background on how we got to where we're at. I appreciate the invite. This has been my first opportunity to be in front of the council, and I wish it was something maybe not as contentious here, but nonetheless, I appreciate the opportunity. My goal for us is twofold. One, I want to have a relationship with the city of Plymouth. We are your fire department. We're very proud to be your fire department, and I want to make sure we're servicing this agreement correctly and we're taking care of business. Number two, we want to do our part with the fire station, and to that end, we are willing to provide as much of the labor as we can to make those repairs, to perform that maintenance in-house with our on-duty crews. Of course, there'll be some things that are outside of our skill set that we can't do, but everything that we can do, we are more than happy to do in an effort to try to help the city. I know that's a lot of money we're talking about. I respect that. And I want to make sure we're doing everything we can to help that process. Lastly, I just want to be clear, and I'm probably stating the obvious here, so I'm sorry, but where that money comes from is not not in our purview. That's entirely up to this body here. But we just identified an issue. I'm trying to offer some solutions, how we can help with those solutions. And my hope is this just turns into one more opportunity for us to work cooperatively with the city of Plymouth, which is, I think, all of our goals. So I'll be available for questions if I can help with anything.
I just wanted to point out, because it keeps being referred to as Station 122,
Mhm.
and the council has named that station Antonio Moreno Fire.
Sure,
Station.
okay.
So let's give credit where credit is due.
Sure, no problem. Sure. Okay. Unless there's any other questions for me. Again, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have others here at City Hall who would like to? We do, please come up.
Hello, Bill Claprock, Plymouth, city resident. I was just discussing it at work today, actually, a very similar circumstance, which is risk reward, right? So what risk do you take for what reward you're going to get? And I think that's exactly the decision before the council today. And Council Member McLaughlin so eloquently described was we have a significant risk, I think, based upon what information has been provided. If we don't move forward with a change in scope, there's significant risk to lose funding altogether. However we got here, right? It is what it is kind of situation. I think there's other opposing, not opposing, but like other considerations. I think there was some sort of like survey that was distributed with a lot of other opportunities. I'm not sure the survey was done that well, needless to say, but there's things like utility assistance, food insecurity, mental health support, that there's significant opportunity within the county and the state for those existing programs, regardless of if COVID ever happened. Right? Food insecurity, there's things we can do for the community that exist. Utility assistance, significant programs, as well as mental health support, right? Which is a very popular topic, I think, in all forums today. So given that, I would just want the city council to determine what risk reward trade-off we have in this situation and support the change in scope for the grant funding to focus on the improvement of the fire station.
Thank you. Anybody else here at City Hall?
Raquel Clapra, from the city of Plymouth. Just wanted to say, I remember coming to a meeting one time, and I don't remember who was the fire station in charge of, but I remember him saying they didn't even have a good chair that they could sit in. And I felt, how could this town does not have a good chair for the fire department? So I just feel terrible hearing how bad the situation is in this building. So go forward and say, I agree for the funds to go to the fire department. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Patty Phelps.
A little bit louder.
This?
No, your voice.
Oh, my voice? Okay.
Don't be shy.
I'm Patty Phelps and I live in the city of Plymouth. And I guess I'm just kind of shocked that this is a contentious issue. When we were going to move here 5 years ago and had to get homeowners insurance, I had to go to the fire station to get a letter saying that there is a fire station in this town. Otherwise, travelers wouldn't have given us homeowners insurance. And any number of times, neighbors have needed the fire department to come help them. and they're there. So like, why is this even an issue? We need to do the right thing and support the fire department the way they support us.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Wise. I am a resident of the city of Plymouth. I guess there's no saying that everything that needs to be said has been said, but just not everybody has said it. Let me just say, I don't know how we got here either, but the fact of the matter is we've got a timing consideration. If we want to use this money in a logical and a constructive manner. Let me piggyback on what Patty just said. 2 days ago, we got a phone call from the individuals that own one of the houses up in our neighborhood, telling us that their insurance underwriter was no longer going to cover insurance because of the fire hazard here in Plymouth. So the lack of a fire station that is viable, that's manned 24/7, now is going to compromise our ability to get homeowners and fire insurance. So there's the risk of a lack of availability of insurance if we don't have a viable, up-to-date fire station operating here. So in no particular order, of a couple of issues I'd like to just touch on real quickly. Time frame. We do have a time frame by which this money has to be expended. Councilman McLaughlin made a terrific point. Under the debt ceiling legislation, this COVID-related money is going to get clawed back big time by the feds. So unless we can tie this money up as fast as we can, we really run the risk of losing this money. So there's a federal consideration that really is at play here. The approval process for expenditures argues against anything that is long-term, to say nothing of the difficulty of understanding how you go through an approval process. And again, the important point is that any of these other and very laudatory considerations for utilization of this money nevertheless requires the city to front load this with no guarantee that the city is going to get reimbursed on the backside. So it's a risk that the city is putting out there for anything that the city doesn't realize is going to get approved in the long run. Investing in city property and in the comment that it makes to our emergency responders can't be understated. This is an investment in real property that, should the city ever want to do something with this property down the road, at least is an investment in a property that is going to pay dividends and come back and have rewards. I would hasten to add that I saw some of these surveys and some of these proposed expenditures of these funds. They're terrific. They're laudatory. They should be something that the city should consider doing. But if it comes through city funds, then there's some discretion and there's some autonomy that the city has in understanding how to run these programs. That autonomy, that discretion does not exist if you're going to go after CDBG money for those types of programs. The requirements are much more strict. And I would hasten to point out that any business entity that received funding on that front side is no longer eligible for this under the CDBG grant program because they were reimbursed by non-CDBG money. So every small business that got those loans is not eligible for any of this money. So I don't know how many businesses that would be left in Plymouth that could potentially apply for other types of program money. I guess my bottom line is that the utilization of funds for a known expenditure that will be approved and in a timely manner really argues for the I think timely expenditure of money that we know is going to ultimately come out of the city treasury anyway. Why not use Fed money to do something that we're going to have to look at some point down the road? Let's save our own money for all these other laudatory programs that have been pointed out that we've got the autonomy and the discretion to do later on. And I thank you very much for.
Thank you. Anybody else here at City Hall who would like to make public comments?
John Coburn, City of Plymouth. I went through the 12 pages of information here. It's very, very well done, and it's amazing that whoever put this together didn't apply for city manager position. But anyway, it was well done, but and going through this, it looks to me like they got about $2.5 million worth of projects here, and we got $250,000 worth of grants. So you'd have to go through these and sort them out, and you'd have to have a committee to assign to do that. You have to go through it. It would then have to come back to the city and make the decision on what you might or might not do. And then the possibility that then you got to fight with the CDBG to see that they're reimbursed. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense that we could get all that accomplished with it before February. And so some of the money for supporting the businesses that may have already failed, that ship has already sailed. The COVID issue of assisting those people that were in big need at that time, that ship has sailed. The money that was spent out that they didn't, okay, that somehow should be, I guess it's still out there on the books that these people that you gave the money to, oh, you that money back, so that should be forgiven. I would make more sense. And some of these projects just don't make a lot of sense that they're in here. One of them being buying a Masonic Hall and buying a piece of a historic building and then tearing it down doesn't make a lot of sense. And some of the things about needing more community meeting places. We have a facility at Lodge Hill that is currently not being used very little. And we have other facilities with all the facilities at the fairgrounds. So to make an investment, substantial investment in more community areas for meetings it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But we do need to, as city council and as responsible citizens, we need to support fire safety here in the city of Plymouth. I think my opinion would be to move forward because it can be done in a timely manner with the repair of the firehouse. And that would honor the memory of the people that went to so much effort to put that. One of them has been Jack Tallman, who was the mayor for many, many years, that ran junkets to Lake Tahoe to raise money to get that firehouse built. To all the Marino family members that worked on all the benefits to get that firehouse built. It would honor those people to try to maintain what they worked so hard to get. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Jamie Lebanco, Fiddletown resident, Plymouth business owner. I'm actually one of the businesses that ship has sailed, as my dad previously mentioned. Prospect Sellers previously, but we do have Shenandoah Excavating a business here in town at this point. I just wanted to say that I also was one of the loan recipients at the beginning of this grant. So myself, Taste Restaurant, Rory's, several of our businesses received small loans at the beginning of COVID out of this fund. I don't think any of the businesses at that point in time really fully understood how much funding was coming. We were all very grateful for the small loans that we got at the beginning of COVID. I think at that point in time, we also didn't know how much, for lack of a better way to state it, COVID was coming, right? I mean, if you recall, when this all started, we thought we were going to be 30, 60, 90 days shut down. We didn't really think that the impacts to our businesses were going to be felt for the long period of times that they were felt. So we were all quite grateful to receive the loans at the onset of this. Discovering that there was funding that could have helped businesses all along that wasn't spent. I mean, again, that ship has sailed, but it certainly is a little bit frustrating to know that now in hindsight. I missed the beginning of your meeting. I apologize for that. I was at a fair board meeting. So I didn't get the comments from your city manager, nor the comments from the council members. It appears to me that the opportunities that some of these great ideas maybe could have taken advantage of, that the timing is not right for those. But I would like to say that there are some really good ideas in here. And supporting your small businesses, supporting some of the efforts to revitalize buildings on Main Street, supporting programs for some of the kids. I even think the Masonic Hall Lodge, community center might not be that might be a good idea. But if the council moves away from some of these ideas tonight, I would hope that and encourage you to keep this list and maybe we continue to work to find ways to do some of these projects. And I'm grateful. I mean, I guess it's been contentious, but I did receive communication from the people who put together this packet of ideas, and it felt like their efforts were sincere. And so I just want to acknowledge that and thank them for reaching out to me as kind of one of our previous business owners. So anyways, thank you for your time. I just kind of wanted to offer that up. And I like to say that we shouldn't let perfect be the enemy of good, and possibly funding the fire department improvements is a good project for us right now. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Don Nunn, Plymouth resident. Listening to all this, I think one thing I've heard from certain people is that, I'm talking about this, is that it seems like more should have been done a couple of years ago. And it's almost feels like, and this isn't a reflection on the people sitting here now, most of you weren't on here, and the one person's fault, but it's almost like the city council is saying, well, since we didn't do what we were supposed to do a couple of years ago, nobody did their job, now we're in a jam and let's just give away the money. As somebody who works in the fire service, I'm completely for fixing the firehouse, making repairs, doing whatever we have to do. It seems like what's going on is they're saying they can use all the money and just put it in one spot, when there's still people, and I know some business owners in town, so they never knew about the money, and so they're still paying off bills. So I don't see why some stuff can't be done with the money at the firehouse, but maybe not the entire amount, and why some of the money can't be used for other things. And it seems like we should be able to apply for more of these grants to fix the firehouse up as nice as we want it. I mean, I know they just got a pretty good one for the firehouse in Pine Grove. Why can't we apply for something here? And maybe even do more than what's on the list. So that would be my thing. And I think that having until February, I think February is quite a long time if somebody's actually working and doing it, trying to, to get things done. So I think there are businesses out there, like I said, I know some businesses that said they're still trying to pay off debt that they have. So, and I don't think you're talking a lot of money. I think you could help those people and still do quite a bit down at the firehouse. I'm all for, let's fix the stuff we need to get done. If there's serious issues at the firehouse, let's do that. But I think that there's grants out there available, and maybe we should be looking at going after a grant just to repair our firehouse or make it nicer, or fix what's there, or make it nicer, expand on it or whatever. And maybe that's something we need to be looking into, is just following up on a grant for that. But if this money was specifically for something else, at least some of it should go to that. So I see it both ways. I mean, like I said, I'm definitely all for, let's get stuff, the things that matter at the firehouse done if there's anything that's a real issue, but let's also still look at all these other things the money was supposed to have been spent on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please, Councilmember McLaughlin.
Just one point, just in diving in, I think it's pretty germane in this, is that the CDBG funds in this case cannot be used in essence to pay for lost revenue. I mean, I love your example, right? Just split up the money, find different ways. But, like paying off debt for an existing business, there has to be a clear, unequivocal, hard, fast piece that COVID caused that debt, not from lost revenue. Otherwise, that expenditure is not eligible for the grant, right? I mean, this is the complexity of, and I'm not, my statement's not so much pointed at you. I just think you brought it back to me in your comments. I'd love nothing more than to find a way, but anyway, for time, I'll stop there.
There are certain.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for understanding that. Anybody else here in City Hall who'd like to comment to the council on this? Okay. How about on Zoom? It looks like we have a lot of people on Zoom and want to thank everybody for their patience. So let's start hearing from our folks who are on Zoom. And Dana, I'll just let you choose some type of order. Okay, Stephanie Moreno.
Thank you. First of all, I want to mention a point of order. The purpose of a public hearing is to gather public input before a council makes a decision. Typically, a public hearing is opened, public comments are solicited, and then council members speak. It appears at least 2 council members have indicated they've made up their mind tonight, even before hearing the public hearing comments. And so I'd like to encourage you to follow normal public hearing procedure in the future. Secondly, I want to respond to a couple of the comments that were made before I say what I was going to say. And I would point out that you allowed several speakers to go over 3 minutes. So I'm hoping I don't get the warning I got at the last meeting when I've never gone over 3 minutes. There seems to be a whole bunch of brand new CDBG experts in the room tonight. There's only one expert in this room as far as I'm concerned, and that's Valerie Kleinfelter. Council member McLaughlin had made many comments in his statements that were inaccurate. I don't know how else to say them. Provision of assistance to profit-motivated businesses to carry out economic development and job creation retention activities is one of the primary eligible activities of CDBG. I've had an involvement with CDBG funds since the 1990s. Some of the things I heard tonight about if you got money, you can't get more money. That's just not true. You can't duplicate services. So if you got $5,000 for payroll, then you can't get more money for payroll if that's already been reimbursed. But if you need $5,000 for improvements for your ventilation system, that's a totally different thing. That's not duplicative services. The comment about the fire insurance has gone up or been canceled because of the lack of repair at the fire station is just absolutely untrue. There's no correlation between the repairs at the fire station and what the fire insurance companies are doing with fire insurance. That's just a threat to intimidate the council or the public into thinking that this is the only option, as far as I'm concerned. There's plenty of public facility money available to repair the fire station, if only the city council would apply for it. There's not plenty of money available that can help the businesses that are still struggling post-COVID. We've talked to a number of them over this period of time, and they have not recovered. Some of them have, but most of them have not gone back to where they were before COVID. And those are legitimate expenses that can be helped with. The city manager mentioned that Calexo had a fire station project just like this, and justifying that's why we should be able to do one. Calexico also allocated $150,000 to do loans to small businesses for COVID. So they were taking care of their small businesses too, before they took care of their fire station. And I don't doubt that fire station needs some repairs, but if you look at the laundry list that was in the public notice, they want to go beyond repairs and they want to do upgrades. They want to put equipment in that we're not responsible for. They want to change the size of the doors to make it more convenient for them. And they want to redo and build a whole office for themselves. And I think that our businesses come before some of those things do. I think some people have suggested maybe the money could be split. I think that's an excellent idea. Let's look at the essential repairs that are needed and fund those, and then put the rest of the money to the residents and public members that are out there. I presented with Amy Gomes the survey on Facebook. The results are in your packet. They were late getting to you because we had to put a lot of time into it in order to get those presented for you. And I'm really disappointed that at least 2 council members have already indicated they've made up their mind without even reviewing those documents. If you look at them, a lot of people made a lot of comments, and I think they're worth listening to. Only 6 people out of 59 thought that all of this money should go to the fire department. And getting 59 people to turn in a survey within 24 hours is indicative of the fact that people in this community care. People in this community are still suffering impacts of COVID, and people in this community want to be asked for their input, and we're delighted to be able to give it. So I encourage you to not make a decision tonight, to take a look at the things on the list. If you want us to prepare budgets for some of those items, we'd be happy to do so, but to give some thoughtful consideration to how to balance the needs that have been presented to you for this funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other hands up on Zoom? Okay, for those of you on Zoom, if there is anybody, it does look like Amy Gomes' hand is up. So I just want to make it clear for the people on Zoom, we're working through taking public comment from those of you who have been waiting patiently on Zoom. So if you would like to make comment, please be sure to raise your hand so we don't miss you. Thank you. Amy? Ms. Gomes?
My name's Amy Gomes. I'm a resident here. I'm not even sure where to begin. I guess I wanted to kind of bring your attention to the survey that was put out and did get 59 residents and business owners. I think there was 20 business owners and residents, that were that had filled out that survey. And I think it was 79% of them didn't know that this was an opportunity or a possibility for them. I know you didn't get this document, and we really tried hard to get it out, but it was kind of a struggle getting everything together and to you. But I just wanted to point out page 4, if you have it. And these were the people that are your business owners that you see every day, and the people that live next door to you. And 59% of them wanted to install lighting at the park. And also, I heard earlier tonight that these items could not be tied back to COVID possibly, and that's just not true. So the document that you received before this one had the authorities listed that showed where they did tie back to CBDG funds. So if they're on this, they pertain. So 59% of the people you see on a daily basis, that you're walking around and looking at, are not interested in spending all the money at the fire department. I'm not saying, I love the fire department. My kid, the day that we were dealing with the first paperwork, the fire department drove past like 3 times. My kid tried to, do the truck honk with him. They gave him a sticker. There's nothing more that I want than to have a nice fire department building for them. However, I don't want to spend money on supplies for AFPD. And I think that they should do repairs. And I also think that you can spend the $56,000 that is due to be spent February of 2024 on fire department, but the other money is not due to be spent. That's $200,000 due to be spent in October of 2024. That's over a year from now. And if we can't get something done in over a year, then what are we doing at all? So on page 4, the first 7 items were that are, the business owners and residents wanted was to increase lighting, to acquire a lease to protect the residents' long-term use of the Plymouth School Ground. All of those things are benefiting the community and the businesses. Purchase acreage, these were different ideas that they had. Purchase acreage, people want parks, and that's part of CBDG funds. People want to pay for their businesses to have outdoor improvements. And also on page 5 and 6, the data is split up between business owners and then residents. And it's really interesting to look at and see what businesses ask for in Plymouth and what residential people ask for. And I found it, it made me happy to see the business owners actually picking things for their community, because most of them live here. They didn't just choose things for themselves or want, to do all the different business items. They chose things for the kids too. And also someone here, I think it was Mr. Caprath, mentioned that he didn't know how well the survey was done, and I would be happy to show my data to you. So what I'm suggesting is that, yes, we all want the fire department to have what they want. And someone said they didn't have a chair tonight. Maybe AFPD needs to deal with chairs. I don't think that's my responsibility, actually. But I think that we can get this done. And I don't know if everyone's seeing the fact that we can have someone else manage these funds. It's been a big job for me to do a lot of this work and work full-time and be a single mom and homeschool my kid, but I'm getting it done, and we've been getting it done. So it's doable, and I would like to be thought of as a help rather than it's some kind of problem that we got to come up with spending this money. This is exciting, and it's been exciting for the community also. So I'm asking, if you want to spend the money, spend $56,000, put a roof on, or maybe spend a little more, whatever. But nobody's reaching out to the businesses. Each business had such a good way to help them just a little bit that would have made a big difference. If we don't have businesses here, everyone's complaining about businesses. We don't have any downtown. And this is the time we have funding for that. And no one wants to actually grab it and say, let's do it. I'm kind of surprised. So anyway, that's what I had to say.
Thank you. Do we have other people on Zoom who would like to make comments during the public comment? Ms. Scanlon?
Yes, good evening. Now I'll speak, and my apologies for speaking out of order earlier. While I deeply appreciate the efforts of Stephanie Moreno and Amy Gomes or Gomez, whichever way she chooses to pronounce it, I don't know where to start. I think the council has done a really good job of explaining the pickle we're in and the logistics of it. And while I mourn the fact that the monies weren't spent the way that they were supposed to be spent, when they were supposed to be spent, and that the community wasn't made aware of them, you can't unring that bell. And the way I look at it is that you're doing your best to try to make lemonade out of the lemons that have been handed. And I think that a lot of the needs that have been identified by the community in the survey and all the different things, those are all wonderful, commendable, laudable things that should be addressed. And if nothing else, I think that this issue has really helped to galvanize the community to see that the needs that are there and what things can be done through the city, through funding, through other grants, through the ambassador program, and through working collaboratively to try to address those needs. But the bottom line is, my feeble-minded approach to it is, it looks like we're in a pickle with regard to utilizing those funds in the most expeditious, efficient way possible without having to risk the fact that they may not be approved. Enough said. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Do we have others on Zoom who would like to comment? Okay. Okay, I just want to say one more time to anybody on Zoom who would like to make comment on this agenda item. Now is your opportunity. So if you want to make a comment, please be sure to raise your hand. And it doesn't look like, agree? Okay. So at this time, I'm going to close this to public comment and bring this back to the council for discussion.
I think there's, because of the way this was presented in the agenda, there is a little bit of misunderstanding. The only portion of this, and Amy touched on that, the only portion that has to have a decision made immediately or before immediately are the CV1 funds. And the project needs to be wrapped up in February. There's still time to have the public engagement and decide what to do with the other 204,000. It doesn't have to be, the agenda is grouping them all together, and I really wanted to point out that they are separate beings, they're separate. And CV1 is the only one, the $56,000 grant is the only one that has to have something done with it. There's been a lot of misinformation running around. Everybody's a CDBG expert now. This is a great example, and I want to thank all of the public, everyone that's here, everyone that engaged, the two women that prepared this. I'd like to hire them. This is an example of how we should be doing things and engaging the public from the very beginning of these processes. And then we would never be here. So I would like us to make a decision on the CV1 tonight, and then retain the ability to, in a month, after looking at everything, make the decision on the CV2 and CV3, which are not due till October 24.
I have a question for Ms. Roberts. As far as numbers 2 and 3, when are those due? Both? And
The deadline to turn in is October 31st, 2024.
for both?
That for both, that's to have all expenses turned in.
Okay, thank you. Other council comments, and I'm going to try to go it somewhat in order here. Councilmember McLaughlin, any further comments, questions?
There's, some really just some great work that's been done by Ms. Marino and Ms. Gomes. I think, it's getting the conversation started with a ton of great ideas. I want to thank our residents and our business owners for, taking the time to weigh in to be able to provide, the information and insight. And there's absolutely projects in here that we need to not let die, no matter what the course is going forward, that we need to champion, and we need to find a way to fund them. And I think has been mentioned, there's some projects that already have, funding out there. It's just a matter of tying the two together. This is, as it's been, it's talked about, the ship has sailed, the bell has been rung, other analogies. And for me, I say we have a mess here. And when I use the word we, is the day I raise my right hand and take the oath of office, whether it was as a fire chief or sitting here today. It doesn't matter what happened before. Now I own and I'm responsible for whatever that piece is. It's not about blaming backward. It's about looking forward and trying to find the best resolve going forward. I'm concerned, I have, based off of the report that I've seen with this fire station, my concern is finding a point or reaching a point of this station becoming, a health and safety piece to where it's uninhabitable, or at least close enough to the point, because there's the habitable piece, and then there's the workplace occupational safety standards, which are entirely different than what we would consider to be habitable for our own homes or houses, because it's a workplace situation. If we find ourselves there, that crew is going to be moved somewhere else. Maybe we're lucky it'll be at the fairgrounds or maybe someplace else, but if that crew can't live there, it has to go somewhere. I don't know what that would look like, but it's a real risk. you know, I think John Colburn made a good point that we need to process and pare down the projects. And I'm grateful that, you know, Ms. Gomes offered to do some of that work to be able to pare it down. And I believe maybe it was Ms. Marino, but I know both have been absolutely interchangeable in this great work to pare it down and create budgets for some smaller pieces. I'm still processing through, you know, some of the options and in specifics, but you know, we definitely have a problem for us. We have a short period, and I just want to close by saying that per the grant guidelines, we have till the end of February until the end of October next year. But with a debt ceiling legislation that was just approved by the president, that money could go away tomorrow. And those grant deadlines would be null and void. They'd be non-existent because that money hasn't been obligated. And that's just a risk that we would be taking if, you know, we weren't further engaged. So that would be my only concern in not moving through something very expeditiously. So thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Thank you.
Councilmember White?
First off, I'd like to thank the public, everyone from the public for their comments. I would also like to, a lot of individuals tonight said, and I'll use our new fire chief. He said that this is just part of, you know, it wasn't like, okay, you know, I need that money. And I understand that you need the money, but the COVID and the fire thing were a separate thing with AFPD. And I kind of want to make that clear that even our new fire chief brought that up. This really sucks for me because it deals with everything that I'm so passionate about. I'm passionate about small business. I'm passionate about youth projects, and I'm passionate about first responders. And I hate to say it. I mean, I just am sick to my stomach right now with the whole thing. I said something previously in the previous meeting about a city manager, fake it till you make it. When we were doing the $5,000 loans, I basically was like, yeah, we need to get money into our small businesses. We need to. I always thought the understanding was every small business got approached. Then we found out that came out of TOT money. And I guess that makes me just sick to my stomach. Because when it was presented, no, this is a way, you know, for our businesses to get these non-refundable loans. Of course, I'm going to support that. So that's just kind of where I'm sitting right now with it.
Sick to your stomach is a good description.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Vice Mayor Sim?
I have a question for Frank or Margaret. If we allocate CV 1, do we jeopardize 2 and 3 for the firehouse? And can it be separated and done in parcels, or does it have to be all done all in one parcel? In other words, we approve 1 for the fire station, and later on, are we jeopardizing 2 and 3 at a later date for the same purpose? You follow
No,
me?
it will be a hard sell to
To go back and get that money.
It will be hard. Amendments are done on a case by case basis. It will be hard for HCD to take CV1 to do the rehab on the fire station with only $56,000. And then ask them to later, if we want to take CV2 and 3 back, because they have to take it to HUD.
Right.
To get that.
So we could be jeopardizing that 2 and 3.
So 2 and 3, if you later decided you wanted to take those to HCD for an amendment for the fire station, might be a little bit more difficult.
Got it.
But not impossible.
That's all I have. Thank you.
But you could leave CV1 the way it is and later take CV2 and 3 for an amendment if you chose to do that, or you can leave them all the same and not jeopardize any of them.
Yeah, I sit here too and feel like we're in we're in quite the pickle, and it doesn't feel good. And, you know, here we are regardless. I also want to thank the community, everybody who came and spoke tonight. Amy and Stephanie, all the hard work that you have done on this. I also want to reiterate what Jamie Lebanco said about the encouragement that there have been some needs and some programs that have been identified that are important. Everything from food insecurity to helping our businesses. We have pages and pages of wonderful ideas. I do think that there is a CDBG expert that we haven't spoken about and we haven't mentioned. That person is not in this room tonight. And that is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren with HCD. In my opinion, there's our CDBG expert who has suggested that if we continue the proposed course, we're really going to run into some difficulty, or we might run into some difficulty. Lauren has offered as a suggestion to make repairs to the fire station. I myself have been to the fire station and toured it. And it needs repair. I'll leave it at that. I think we all understand that. So we can continue with the original plans of where this grant was headed. And we take the chance of being denied reimbursement. Despite all of the great ideas, I am not willing to gamble right now. It feels like a gamble to me to do that. And I'm not willing to gamble with the city's money, with the community's money, with the taxpayers' money. If we have a CDBG consultant, Lauren, giving this advice, might not be what we had really wanted from the beginning. I feel like we would be foolish not to follow that advice. Any other comments? Okay, at this point, I am looking for council direction, or I would entertain a motion.
I think there's a person on Zoom who has a question.
We have, thank you, but we have closed public comment.
Is the motion bundled?
If we could take the resolution regarding the signature separately and first.
And that applies regardless of what.
And that applies to CV1 for all the grant applications and amendments.
I'll make a motion. A resolution approving an amendment to the standard agreement for the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Program for coronavirus response round 1 CDBG CV1 NOFA dated June 5th, 2020.
Are we taking the resolution 2023-27, designating the city manager as the authorized person to execute those agreements as the motion first that you're looking at?
What resolution? Or 2023-28-29. That includes the amendment.
Well, I couldn't do all three in one motion.
You can say I want to adopt the resolution that's presented.
I do want to do it as
And make clear that.
all three.
20-29, that includes the amendment.
That's correct.
Yeah, not gonna do work with that.
Well, it's not. Yes. I want to make a motion for all three.
Language is a little bit vague because on the second piece, it assumes certain things. The resolution assumes fire station or permit. The second piece has a choice.
Well, I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
Well, that's all we can say about.
Yeah. I want to make a motion for all three.
Okay, including resolution 2023-28 and 2023-29, include the amendment for the fire station or permit.
That's correct. You want to say it?
I think that's fair enough.
That was clear enough?
Yeah.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's not quite clear to me. Kelly, are you able to just kind of clarify what we have going on here? For me,
A
please.
motion, yes, I'll try.
Thank you.
A motion was made to approve the grants for CV1, CV2, and 3 to approve the resolution 2023-27 and to designate the city manager as the authorized person to execute those agreements and approve 2023-28 and 2023-29, which are for both grants to be combined and to take the option of repairing the fire station if those grants are approved. That
Option 2.
Okay, it was moved and seconded. So could we please have a roll call vote?
Councilmember White,
Just because we're in a pickle, aye.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
If we weren't in a pickle, we'd be doing something different. Aye.
Councilmember Kleinfelter,
I'm going to vote no, and it is about the process more than it is about the repairs. The city has not shown the ability to implement these projects, and so I just have to vote no.
Vice Mayor Sim,
Aye.
Mayor Ackerland,
Aye.
the motion passes 4-1.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience. We have another agenda item. I want to ask the council and city staff, is anybody feeling the need to take a 10-minute break, or would you like to work through this?
I think the budget issue might be something that we want to review at home for a few days, provide comments back to Margaret, and then bring back, because if we've been here, I think we're all getting rummy with, and so throwing in all those numbers at the same time might be a little much for tonight.
Can I go over just a couple of things that have come up for you to consider while you're reviewing? So I met with the sheriff today, And they are requesting an increase to their budget to the dollar amount of $427.20. Yes. So, Mary, our finance director, is looking for some grants and we're looking for ways to cut money in the budget. We know there's no way we can come up with that amount of money. So, I just wanted to give you that piece of information. And also the second piece of information, and the only other piece of information I want to give you, is that General Services Administration with the county gave a contract asking for $36,803. I asked for the amount of number of calls they provided in a 12-month period, which was 8. And our fire service contract is $32,451. I asked for calls for service in that same amount of that exact same time frame. They did 139 calls for service. So animal control would be $4,600 per call versus 233 calls per service for the fire service. And they're here 24/7. So I would not recommend the contract for animal services, but I just wanted to let you know that that came in. I'm not recommending that we enter into an agreement with animal control. I did talk to this about the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department did say they do respond to barking call complaints. They do respond on any vicious animal call. And they just wanted us to be aware that they do respond to those anyway. So for that, that's.
Did they say how they justified quadrupling the annual?
If I was gonna say, if we're gonna table this,
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say, even though you're tabling it, we are having a discussion on it, so you probably need to go to public comment too.
so I need to what?
Go to public comment too. Because we're not, we didn't table it, we just tabled most of it, but we started the conversation, so. I mean-
Okay, got it.
If I could make just a suggestion, I mean, I know there's lots of numbers as Councilmember Kleinfelder pointed out, but it'd be great to get a staff report on the overall budget priorities that are included in the direction, the strategy, some of the higher level pieces, so that as we go through numbers, there's some context in what we're looking at, because we're quickly moving to the point of needing to approve our budget. So
I think we interrupted you. Interrupted your train of thought. I hope not.
I didn't put any new priorities in the budget. I left things status quo, trying only to increase where I saw increases come in this year in terms of increasing where, such as chlorine prices increase. I had to raise that budget line item because we have to have chlorine at the pool and the wastewater treatment plant in order to keep those things in line. I gave you more detail in the budget as you asked for. I hope it is the detail that you're looking for. I don't know, with no discussion really tonight, I don't know if you want to do a special meeting to go over the budget or just bring it back next meeting for discussion and adoption. I don't know what the council's wish is for that. Since the council doesn't have any goals in place, I don't have any way to put priorities into the budget. So I really try to keep it as much status quo as possible.
I would support, under the circumstances, I would support a special meeting sooner rather than later.
We cannot have it next Thursday because there is going to be a planning commission meeting.
Okay.
So next Thursday is out.
It doesn't have to be on a Thursday, right?
Correct.
Okay,
24-hour notice.
okay, yeah, okay, good to know.
Sorry, what's next Thursday?
Planning Commission meeting.
Oh, fine, okay.
Okay.
Got
So how's everybody feel about a special meeting?
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I agree, but my thought process is that it would be like a workshop
Okay,
where we work together and it goes back and forth a little bit, think outside the box a little bit
Yeah.
and go, oh no, that box won't work.
Please, that would be wonderful.
okay.
You want to Pick a date. Or wherever.
Yeah,
We're all
I
here.
don't. Yeah, well, I want to make sure that we're giving the opportunity for, being we are having a discussion, that we are giving the opportunity for public comment on this. And, so anybody here in City Hall have public comment they'd like to present with regard to item 0.71, which is our budget? Okay, how about on Zoom? I see some hands up. Stephanie, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'd like to support what Councilmember McLaughlin just said about needing more detail and discussion about priorities before adopting the budget. I think that's an excellent suggestion. Secondly, I don't think status quo is going to work. I think that you're going to have to look, it sounds like it's some cutbacks. There's been a significant increase in personnel costs, especially over the last 4 or 5 years since we've been through these city managers with not a lot of thought given to that. And I think that needs to be looked at. And I'd like to see more detail, more of a budget narrative about the specific things, particularly personnel, and if the salary tables that are included in the budget documents include either cost of living or merit increases, or if they're exactly where they are right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I see another hand up. Oh, okay, okay. Is there any other public comment on Zoom for this item? Okay, so I'll go ahead and close item 7.1 to public comment. And do we want to come up with a date now for a special meeting?
Tuesday would probably be ideal for me, so.
Tuesday. Good Tuesday.
It's the same night as bingo at Lodge Hill. I think that,
How's Wednesday?
no, I could skip bingo.
Oh, you can
Yeah,
skip bingo?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Uh,
Can
okay.
I go to bingo?
Okay, never mind. I'm good with Wednesday, the 14th.
Tuesday. I'm out of town Wednesday till the following council.
Okay. Did we talk about Monday, the 12th?
Yeah, Monday, Tuesday.
Monday's fine for me too. It's Monday.
Okay.
I can't do Monday, but yes, I will.
Okay. I'm sorry, what were you saying about Monday?
How are you, Morgan? Monday. Your option.
Monday?
I'm good Monday.
Valerie, Monday? Thank you. Monday, the 12th? And what time do we like to start? I'm hearing the earlier the better, but
6 is the earliest.
okay. Oh. Okay,
For Monday.
okay. So should we move to Tuesday, the 13th? Okay. 6 p.m.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I still might be running in a little more, but yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll have a special meeting, a budget workshop, Tuesday, June 13th at 6 p.m. Okay. At this point, we will move on to item 8, city manager report.
I'll try to make it brief. We just talked about bingo at Lodge Hill at 6:30 p.m. The pool is open for the summer. We already talked about the ambassadors raking the cemetery. Last night I met with the residents at Zinfandel Ridge and advised them of things that are happening within the city and did a question and answer period with a variety of topics. I thought it went very well. And Pizza in the Park started last night, which will happen every Wednesday night from 5:30 to 8 through September. And last night they sold out at 7 o'clock and they said next week they'll bring more pizza dough so they can serve more people. And that's my report.
Thank you. Council member reports. Councilmember McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As with the ambassadors, has been mentioned, we had a great project yesterday. We're going to have a couple more days of, raking leaves and moving debris, but, we're going to, I'll be meeting with Margaret and Kathleen Johnson and then Cameron Begbie with Lava Dog, who is, as we've talked about, is, I guess, he and I are co-captains and working to leverage this forward, but certainly be doing a recruitment and trying to get, more folks involved. Really, it's I think as Bill Klaproth pointed out, that it's really I guess builds character, builds spirit, builds things, you're out there, it's community helping community. So it's a good thing. The one significant, I guess, report I have is I met with Michelle Tyre and Alan McNaney with American Legion Ambulance last week to discuss response and coverage as a result of many of the concerns that have been raised here in the community. Ultimately, leading up to about a month ago, maybe it's been 6 weeks, up to that point, there have been regular brownouts. And a brownout is basically a station is still open, but it may not be staffed on a given day because they're unable to get staffing back, where a blackout would be like a fully closed station. But as a rule, the station was closed quite extensively. And as we talk through a number of things that the mandatory vaccination for personnel during COVID resulted in, the loss of, 10. So they went from 24 to 14 paramedics over that period through attrition plus a mandatory vaccination. And we also had a 2-year period where all paramedic schools were closed. So there weren't new people coming up through the channel. They reported to me that Medic 5 is currently basic life support. It hasn't been browned out in over a month. And they have 4 paramedics coming on board within the company this month with a plan then of moving Medic 5 back to ALS at that point. And then their ultimate goal would be to add a 6th BLS unit in the county that would be more focused on some of the interfacility work. They shared for me that as a result of some of the behavioral health challenges and the need to transport as far away as Santa Rosa or Yuba City, they created a unit that's basically an on-call unit with, it's like retired firefighters, EMTs, paramedics that basically are driving behavioral health people to these facilities. So we're not taking an in-service 911 BLS or ALS ambulance out of the system, which is a huge step. We talked about move up and cover and levels of coverage, and they identified that as they drop down to what's called level 1, having 1 unit available in the system. If it's a BLS system, they're one of their managers, will cross staff. Obviously we have a county that's a big challenge, but for me, what I really asked for them is I asked them to provide us some very detailed data. I want to see call volume. I want to see the breakdown of call volume of ALS versus BLS. I want to see the types of calls we're running, and those that are ALS, how many of those were code 3 returns or should have been code 3 returns, so that we have a level of understanding of the the coverage needs in our community. We know that our call volume is, in Plymouth and its surrounding areas, not just strictly the city limits, is about 35 calls a month. And so the call volume isn't big, but long response times are important, right? And so it's balancing those two out. I asked for 90th percentile of the response time. I looked for unit hour utilization, meaning how often is this unit busy during a given 24-hour period or an assigned period? How long is it available in quarters versus being available in the Plymouth district versus not being in the district at all, and really trying to understand what is our level of service. The challenge for where we're geographically located is the next bump up spot would be, basically Sutter Hill. Well, that's 20 minutes. We drive the equivalent speed of code 3 every time we go to Lowe's because there's no lights and that's how fast you go. Right. And so the key is, for us starting off was, all right, let's have data. If the data is not good, let's find a way to work together because, I guess was a rising sea raises all ships, right? If we can, collaborate and find ways to improve levels of service, then we all win by it. And so, I'm hopefully optimistic. I think it was a good meeting overall, and my intent would be, working with Margaret and package this up into some degree of a comprehensible report and maybe put it out to the city's Facebook page or something to just keep our community informed. We are paying attention. So anyway, that is all. Sorry to be long-winded yet again.
Thank you for that amazing report.
Okay, I went to the Memorial Day celebration. It was amazing. I want to thank the Rotary. I want to thank Jimmy Lebanco and Cameron Bigsby and Mr. Steiner for all the speaking and the talking. It was an amazing event. I also went to Pizza in the Park last night. Mr. Slusher himself cooked my pizza for me, and it was delicious. And I'm very excited that they're going to be there every Wednesday. And I'm looking forward to 4th of July. I heard we got a band that's going to play at 4th of July, so I'm looking forward to that. So that's all I have.
That's not what I heard.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith. Councilmember Kleinfelter?
I will be attending a League of California Cities meeting on Monday. I will provide Margaret with future agenda items. And as usual, I will get legislative updates to the council.
Thank you. Councilmember or Vice Mayor Sim? Sorry.
I would like to thank Councilmember McLaughlin for putting together the effort up at the cemetery. It was well done. I think it's gonna be wonderful. You're ahead of it now, and I know you have other projects in front of us. One, I guess we're gonna paint the picket fence around the park. Looking forward to that. Apparently, we probably need to make a few more phone calls in the future. I'll be willing to do that. Get a few more people out. But thanks again for doing it. It was a nice day. Thank you.
I want to add on, well, first of all, I did earlier this afternoon, I did get a call from Jamie Lebanco because she did not think that she could make it tonight. She specifically asked me to pass along her thanks to city staff for the wonderful job that they did with assisting with the Memorial Day event. And I want to also add that I was happy I was able to attend that, and it was such a nice event and so well attended. It was an honor to be there. So she's not here for me to say it. We've all said it. Thanks to Jamie for putting that together, especially under the circumstances with what Jamie has going on, and everybody who participated. It was very moving, and then also, I also want to thank Margaret's support with that and the city staff and their efforts in that. And then, of course, thank Rotary for what a wonderful job. And that's all I have for right now. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting.